I'm Heather.
And I'm Desiree.
And you're listening to
the Perpetually Overdue Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perpetually Overdue Podcast. My name is Heather.
And I'm Desiree.
And on this week's episode, we want to talk about something that is currently happening, ongoing, and something that we have both experienced, and I think a lot of people have experienced, which is self-improvement burnout. Now, I did do a little research before this episode, so let's get the boring stuff out of the way. I did find a couple resources in regards to why self-improvement is such a millennial thing.
It is.
Now, granted, I'm not saying that self-improvement is exclusive to millennials, so
No.
Gen Xers, Gen Z, don't come for me. Everybody has free reign when it comes to self-improvement, but according to a resource, CBC, it was the 1970s and 80s where we really saw the biggest boom when it came to self-help or self-improvement, with a second wave that occurred in the 2000s and the 2010s.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So yes, while some people, and this is like a Stranger Things argument as well, may claim 70s and 80s is Gen X generation, and I'm not saying that it isn't, although from 1981 and on to about, I can't remember what the end date is, those are millennials.
Mm-hmm.
So we also, even though
are Gen Xers claiming to be 80s babies?
No, but they're claiming the 80s in general because they were adolescents during the 80s as opposed to us being bibis.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hence, when I say the Stranger Things argument, I mean that after the Stranger Things finale that just happened, the Gen Xers were like, this is our generation. You guys don't know, whatever. Because we couldn't possibly ever relate to the storylines regardless of what era they took place. But yes, I get it. The characters in the show were the same ages as a lot of Gen Xers. I get it. So even though self-help really blew up in the 1970s and 80s, you have to think about the effect that it had on millennials in the sense that pretty much for our whole lives, we've been hearing about self-help and self-improvement in some shape or form. Not only growing up hearing about it, understanding it as a concept and what its purpose is, but really seeing the fruit of it as we get older. Because just because it blew up in the 70s and 80s doesn't mean that all of a sudden everybody was great, everybody was doing it. You know, it takes time for those things to ramp up.
And it ebbed and flowed. I think I think the 90s was like a halting period, because there was a lot of other stuff emotionally, culturally, mentally happening as well.
So there was an article on Medium that was written about 2021 that explained why so many millennials were obsessed with self-improvement. Now, granted, we're not just talking to millennials here, but since we both are elder millennials, I think it's important to talk about our own experiences, but this can really apply to any generation.
Yes.
But they did mention a couple of reasons that I thought was really specific to our generation. They mentioned globalization, media, social media, and the spread of Western culture, which kind of created us to be a more homogenous culture, meaning more similar to each other because we're consuming the same content.
Ooh, that's true. Like, we know that logically, but when you really sit and think about it, that's actually huge societal wise, worldwide, that we actually have come to a point in time where we're so much more alike and able to relate to one another, probably like no other time in recent history.
But the flip side of that is that because we're more alike, this is why you have trends that just take over society. For example, when Instagram model look came out and then everybody was getting plastic surgery, everybody was getting lip filler and Botox and doing specific things to get that look, I feel like that was more widespread in our generation than in any other previous generation. Granted, there were magazines and people all had access to that, but the spread of information is happening at a more exponential rate than ever before.
Well, think
And
about it. Sorry, real quick. If you
no, go
think
ahead.
about it with magazines and how things used to be, there was a separation. Whereas when this started happening for our generation, there was Facetune. Suddenly, we're literally putting on our face this
Yeah.
image of perfection that we wanted, that we were all face tuning and looking alike. And then give or take 5 years later, surgery was more prevalent to create this look that was digital and AI, and that we were all putting literally on our face. So now there was no longer that separation,
Yeah.
and the need to bring that to life really became a huge staple within a lot of the young people within our generation.
And because of that, you went from everybody having sort of like a very unique look where their features are specific to them, to everybody putting filters on their face to look like one kind of person, and then that being promoted and then being taken to the extreme where people are getting surgery. So now they don't need the filter anymore. I think about all the videos where people accidentally move and the filter doesn't follow them right away, and then you get to see what they really look like. It's shocking sometimes how dramatic these filters have changed the way that people look, have made their noses smaller, their lips bigger, their skin flawless.
Yeah.
It contributes to something that we'll talk about later, but how self improvement has become essentially toxic.
Mm.
But before mentioning that, I want to also say that something that this Medium article said that I thought was super integral in understanding how self improvement got to the place that it did, which was that there was a shift in perspective on self help and self improvement, where the mentality on it before was it's for those who are just dissatisfied with their lives.
Mm.
Similar to therapy. Think about how therapy used to be looked at, and the mentality is, "Oh,
Huge taboo.
it's just for crazy people."
Mm-hmm.
And when I say crazy, I mean it in the way that older generations say it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that that's a accurate way of describing anyone. I don't really like that word,
Mm-hmm.
but that's how a lot of our older generation
That's
would.
specifically, yeah, the term they would use, and the imagery of that term was very specific.
Yeah. And mind you, I don't blame them necessarily because they are the generation of asylums.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what they saw in the media of what a mental health asylum looked like was very scary, was very taboo. And so when they think of therapy, I'm sure a lot of things come to mind, lobotomies being one of
Yeah.
them. And
Yeah.
even though we've come a long way since then when it comes to therapy, I think that some of those stigmas and some of that fear and trauma, even from being exposed to mental health asylums, is something that sticks with you and is very hard to overcome.
Yeah. And sadly, the stereotype that they grew up with was anyone with mental health issues was very one note imagery wise. And it was always an extreme. To be labeled someone who needed help mentally was a terrifying almost insult to them, because they then said, so you see me in this one really aggressively
Yeah.
irrational way that needs to be put away. Like, that's the only term to someone who had mental health struggles.
And that's the key. You said it right there. Somebody who needs to be put away. Can you imagine the fear of struggling with depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and
And
not
there's
being
no help.
able to say anything for fear of being locked away for the rest of your life, for
Which
fear of being lobotomized?
which so many people were not that long ago. And women were all the time being put away by their husbands.
Hysterical. That's what they would call it, that they
Yeah.
were hysterical.
And they didn't even have mental health issues.
No, and even if they had, I don't know, maybe hormonal imbalances, maybe they
Mm,
were going through perimenopause or menopause and
mm.
it was affecting their mental health. I will say
Postpartum.
postpartum depression, huge. And that, just to touch on that for like a quick second, that is still something that is very taboo and is not studied enough and is not spoken about enough. But I will say for me personally, I had fibroids
Mm,
and I had them removed surgically. But the mental toll that it took on me, the black hole that I would go into every
mm.
time I was about to have my menstrual cycle, it was deep and it was scary. And as soon as I had them removed, it was like a cloud had lifted off of me. But I would have never known that that was even tied to the fibroids had I not had the internet and the plethora of information. And mind you, women's health is grossly under researched
Yep.
and underdeveloped. And
Yes.
so the information that we have now is a huge blessing compared to what women had back then to figure out what was going on with
Even just
themselves.
30 years ago.
So now we have that shift happening with self help, which I think a lot of that mentality shift happened like the end of Gen X going into millennial, where we start seeing things that were previously in a very negative light and we start
Mhm.
seeing the benefits of it and how it could be positive. It's not just for people who are dissatisfied with their life, but it's for people who want to have the best version of themselves and want the most out of life. Now, I think that if it had stayed that way, it would have been great. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that self help and self improvement is bad.
No.
But I think that social media is a double-edged sword in that it provided us with a ton of new ideas, better ideas. It normalized self-help and self-improvement, and it popularized it. We
Yes.
have talked about in previous episodes how helpful it has been people sharing their experiences, their
Mm.
diagnoses for physical health reasons,
Mhm.
but also the mental toll that chronic illness can take on you
Yep.
and hearing other people talk about it and share their experience, it's like a little bit of that weight gets lifted off of your
Huge.
shoulders.
Oh my gosh, yes, huge. But unfortunately, like with everything, we take it to the extreme.
Always. Never always. Never
Never
always.
always.
If you get that reference, you get it.
So yeah, unfortunately, like with everything, we take a turn in culture and society and we finally find this really positive thing and we take it on.
Mhm.
But I think in part with social media and the growth of influencers, it then becomes how can I monetize this? And
Yep.
unfortunately, some people do it with good intentions, and then some people really get lost in the weeds and get focused more on the greed aspect of making money than what they're promoting and what they're putting out there. And so the toxic take of it then starts becoming putting forth this perfect persona that
Mhm.
suddenly everyone wants to strive for on a daily basis. And it's not realistic. It's not even realistic to the influencer who is putting out the daily
Yeah.
content of this unrealistic routine and system and ideology that supposedly they themselves are partaking in, but they're not. And
No.
so, yeah, unfortunately, there takes a turn. And so, while self improvement is very important, and I absolutely am grateful that we took this turn in the millennium and chose to not give into the rat race of the boomer age, we have at least stepped away from that and decided to find our own new normals and how we want to
Mm.
live our lives instead of what society back then and what part of them, because they're still around, are still
Yeah.
trying to bring us back to. They want us to go back
Mhm.
to the dissatisfying day to day monotony of living.
Yeah. And they want to reverse a lot of the progress that we've made with mental health, talking about things like autism and trying to make it
Mm,
into something that it's not. And I'm sure that they would do that with pretty much just about everything because, again, having a mental health issue of some kind is still taboo to a lot of the older generation and is still something that they very much feel like we're just making up and
mm-hmm.
that we just need to toughen up. And that is the way that we're going to get through. Mind you, a lot of the way that people back then toughened up was through alcohol, being drunkards.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, what is so wrong with finding better and healthier ways to cope than doing drugs, drinking alcohol, being angry and violent? And
Mm.
I'm not saying that the boomer generation is all like that, and the silent generation too, but a lot of the coping that they did back then was through substance abuse.
Yeah.
And
They had nothing
obviously,
else. They didn't have tools. No one was giving them any other way to find healthy means to deal
Yeah.
with all of these emotions and traumas and things that no one was talking about back then.
And perhaps there is a bit of resentment that we didn't have to suffer in the way that they did. I
Mm,
definitely feel that sometimes from Gen X and Boomer generation. I would like to think that I don't feel that way about Gen Z and Gen Alpha. You know, like if
mm.
they have better resources than I did, I would think that I would be happy about that,
I
that I
want
would be
them to
like,
do better.
great.
Yeah, I want them to do better and be better for themselves because that in turn hopefully gives us a better future than the shit pile we're currently in.
And I see a lot of that within Gen X and Boomers where there's a lot of comparison. There is a lot
Mm.
of glorification of trauma almost.
Yeah.
You know, like I had to drink from the hose outside, and my parents never let us come inside to use the bathroom. We had to piss in the woods and like stuff like that, where I'm just like, that's not a good thing, you
Yeah,
know?
like, why
And
are we bragging? Do you want me to also do that? Like
right. It's almost like a rite of passage of it made me
Mm,
strong, it made me tough. No, it made you traumatized. It was never okay. It wasn't
mm,
okay for you. It wasn't okay
mhm.
for the generations older than you. And
Yeah,
we're learning and we're doing better, and that's a good thing. We're progressing as a society. We're learning what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. But unfortunately, there's a lot of backlash with that too,
yeah.
which is why you have terms like snowflakes. If somebody finds out that you're in therapy or that you are on this healing journey, if you
Mhm.
use certain vocabulary, then all of a sudden you're a snowflake. I would gladly be a snowflake and
Oh god,
have
any
my
day.
trauma worked through
I'm the
than
one who has
be
to live in this brain and body. I'm not going to stay in a prison of torment just to,
exactly.
like, fit whatever narrative you deem I should be living. I'm the one who's suffering the consequences, so I'm gonna go my snowflake route so that I can live a better life mentally, emotionally, and physically. Thank you.
All day long. All day long. There are a million rabbit holes that we can go on, but I also
Mm.
think it's why our generation isn't having as many kids, among many other
Mhm.
reasons. But
Mhm.
nobody wants to bring children into this world in its current state. It's political unrest and economic strife, but also it's like realizing I don't want to fuck up another human being.
Yeah.
And even if I do parenting to the best of my ability, if I
Mhm.
try to heal my trauma, if I go to therapy, inevitably I'm gonna fuck them up a little bit. And like having nephews and seeing them now come into early adulthood and deal with a lot of difficult things. I've told my sister, I don't know how you do it. I am so glad that I am child free because it is just as difficult on the parent when their child is going through something as it is
Yeah.
on the child.
Yeah.
And the worry alone can cause not only a million gray hairs, but take years off of your life that you might not want to give.
You can't just fix it. You
No.
want to so bad. I can't
Oh my gosh.
imagine that daily turmoil. I feel that about people I love. I can't imagine feeling that. One, towards my own child.
Yeah.
Two, towards my own child who I'm living with on a day to day basis. So I'm witnessing their struggle and can't fix it. That would drive me up the wall.
Not only can you not fix it, you cannot force them to take the resources
Mm-hmm.
that you provide them.
Yeah.
So, counseling,
Yeah.
therapy, when they're under 18, you kind
Yeah.
of but you don't want to force them because
Mm,
then they're going to have a negative viewpoint of therapy.
yeah.
They're there against their will.
Yeah.
But once they pass 18, you really have no choice in the matter. Anyway, so
Yeah.
we're getting off of topic. What you said about influencers,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to say in a very general sense, not just influencers, but any public figure.
Yes.
Anybody who's
Yeah.
in the spotlight, who you know their
Celebrities,
name and their business.
musicians, TV people, anybody, yeah.
Yeah. It went from becoming your best self to this relentless. And
Mm.
relentless because you have about 5 million gurus on YouTube all claiming to know the secrets of life.
Mhm.
So it's relentless because a lot of times it's their whole shtick. They're a lifestyle blogger. And so
Mhm.
they're talking about ways in which you can do X, Y, and Z, and they're showing you their morning routine and their evening routine every freaking day. And it's exhausting for the viewer, and I'm sure for the content creator as well.
Yeah.
But it goes from self-help to this relentless, toxic pursuit of perfection. You're constantly tracking. You're endlessly consuming content, which inevitably leads to burnout and feelings of inadequacy.
Yep.
Instead of what it should be, which is fulfillment.
And sadly, I mean, add to that all of the other people on there as well telling you, you need to buy this, you need to have these
Oh
greens,
my
you need to have these
gosh.
supplements, you need to do this, you need to put your feet in that, you need to make sure you wrap your hands in this. You like
You need
everyone's
to steam your vagina.
Yes.
And then you scroll and the next person is saying, don't steam your
Steam your
vagina.
So there is this constant, like you said, overconsumption of information,
Yeah.
all contradicting each other, coming from literally every angle possible. So it almost becomes this overstimulating, overwhelming narrative of what the hell am I supposed to do to reach enlightenment?
No, it's true. And imagine Desiree and I, because we're elder millennials, we were there when social media started.
Yeah.
Which, saying that out loud, makes me feel like a fucking dinosaur.
It's wild. It's yeah. It's weird.
And our first social media app that we ever had was MySpace.
Yes, and apps, mind you, didn't exist in phones yet. It
Right.
was a website.
So just think for a second, on even the MySpace level, did you not experience feelings of inadequacy when you would go onto other people's profile and see their beautiful banner? They had little things falling in the background, and you're just like, how did they do that? And then you look at your own profile and you're like, man, my profile's so plain and boring. And you became a coder all of a sudden.
Yes, all
Like,
of us.
The most basic bitch coder you can think of, but still, you went into MySpace's code to add things or take things away to make it look a certain way to compete. And I'm not going to say it's where comparison started, because I think comparison has always been a thing, but it amplified it.
Yes. It was a turn of a century thing, because it was, like you said, it was the beginning of now social media connections and being able to connect worldwide with people in an instant. This was a new concept that we all obviously became obsessed with. I mean, we're so obsessed with it, but it was an instant obsession because suddenly we had access to anything and everyone.
In a split second, like you said.
Exactly. And then in addition to inadequacies, going to someone's profile and not being in their top 8.
Oh, yeah.
And
not everybody knows about the top 8.
But you're on my top 8? Oh no, does she hate me? Did I say something to anger her? Now we have social anxiety issues amplified.
Yeah, or looking at their music and being like, oh gosh, the music that they have on their profile is so much cooler than the music that I have. And couple that with Facebook, because MySpace,
Which came after
that. MySpace, it really wasn't a point of connection in the same way that Facebook was.
No.
Facebook allowed you to just share the random thoughts that would pop into your head, but also post pictures of the most random thing. That was the thing that I miss about
it
Facebook.
Introduced that, yeah.
And don't take that out of context. I hate Facebook. Facebook is a fucking cesspool.
Yes.
Okay? But back when it first started, and granted, it also did not start well, because the creator of it basically started it to rate girls and shit like that. But when we got a hold of it, nothing was curated. Nothing. When I tell you nothing, I mean nothing. You said whatever was on your mind, doesn't matter how unhinged or stupid or ridiculous or cringy it was. And you posted pictures of literally the dumbest, insignificant, irrelevant thing. And not just 1, 50 of them.
Yeah.
But there was a beauty to that. In that, you got to see what people's real life was actually like.
That's true. You know what? Actually, yeah. Instagram fucked all that up, because that's when things became about curating perfect images of still moments. Whereas Facebook, we were letting it all hang out as it is.
And you know why? Because social media had not kicked off to the point where
Mm.
it could be monetized and it could be
Yes.
used for business. So
Mhm.
literally it was what it was meant to be, which is a platform for socializing.
Yeah.
It wasn't about business. And I kind
Mm.
of hate the fact that business completely took over social media.
Yeah.
And again, double-edged sword
Pros and
because
cons, yes.
it allowed a lot of people to leave their 9 to 5 grind and to pursue things that they really love to do. And I love that for everyone. But at the same time,
Yeah.
because it became a business, it's not just small content creators. We're talking about corporations now.
Yeah.
And that's who you're competing with on social media when you're trying to use social media as a brand or a business.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
you don't realize that there was a shift at one point, and the average everyday user, you, me, we were not privy to this shift in that all of a sudden brands were now people. We
Mm.
thought that what people were selling to us, what people were showing as their life was real.
Yeah.
And we were like, wow, this is so cool. This is so glamorous. And you look at your life and you're like, sucks in comparison. And then they're telling you about this outfit that they're wearing or this product that they're using. And you're genuinely thinking, like, oh, this person went out and bought this and paid for it with their own money.
Mhm.
And they look good in it, or they're saying that it does X, Y, and Z. I believe them because you're not thinking that they're getting paid to do it.
Mhm.
And now everybody knows that.
Yeah.
It's
But
not a
back
secret
then, that
anymore.
was not even a thought, a possibility in our minds.
And oh my God, did I feel like shit. I don't know if you ever caught on to that because
Mm.
I think it's also the amount of time that you spend on social media.
Yeah.
But there was one season in social media, I think it was around the 2010s,
Okay.
when I was like, holy, again, this is
Mm.
when we didn't know that people had become brands now and that their
Mm.
whole persona was fake.
Mhm.
I was really seeing a lot of curated content and looking at people's pages and seeing this theme where like all their pictures had the same filter, they had the same color scheme, and they look so pretty. I'm looking at my own and I'm going, well, no wonder I have like 300 followers. Like, who is going to want to know? Like, I'm still stuck in the Facebook era.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm not posting like a bajillion pictures of the same thing, but I'm not posting a trip to Fiji.
For me, actually, it wasn't like Instagram and Facebook stuff. It was
Yeah.
YouTube at that time because
Mm.
I was watching a lot of the now millionaire lifestyle vloggers who were still in their humble stages where they weren't millionaires yet. They were just starting to monetize them and they were just like college age, younger than me at
Mm.
the time,
Yeah.
and they were just living their lives in LA in an apartment that was normal. And so I was fooled into thinking everything they had and wore and experienced was just normal, everyday, awesome opportunities that just fell into their lap. Because again,
Yeah.
around the 2010s, we weren't fully privy to how much they were being given and sponsored because those things weren't fully in the open yet. And so I was very much FOMO about wanting what they had,
Mm.
wanting the decor, wanting their life routines. So for me, it was more actually YouTube lifestyle vloggers that I watched all the freaking time at that stage in life.
That's
I
almost
wasn't as much.
worse.
It was worse because I wasn't as much on the apps of social
Yeah.
media. It was more I lived on YouTube. And yes, it was worse because I'm watching a human being living life and not just an image. I was being more enthralled by it and more captivated and tempted
Oh,
and
yeah.
envious because I'm seeing someone's day to day, like right before my eyes.
And you're thinking even more so, like, this is what their life looks like all the time.
Yeah.
Because mind you, yes, Instagram is not just photos, but at one
Mhm.
point, boys and
Mhm.
girls, um, Instagram was just photos and there wasn't reels.
Not even multiple photos, like carousels, one image.
One image. And so the FOMO and the feelings of inadequacy really got me before Reels ever existed. Because mind
Mhm.
you, Reels came because of TikTok.
Oh,
TikTok
yeah.
really provoked Instagram, just like Snapchat provoked Instagram to do
Mm.
stories.
Yep.
TikTok provoked Instagram to do Reels. They
And then
wanted to
short and
compete.
YouTube wanted to do shorts because they wanted to compete. Yep.
Exactly. So here we are looking at pictures and you're watching lifestyle vlogs and we're just feeling like, God, our life is so boring in comparison, or we don't have these same opportunities. And then compound that with the fact that it's younger people
Yeah.
because we're elder millennials. So it's still our generation, but slightly younger than us who are
Yeah.
doing it. And then we're really feeling like losers over
Yeah.
here. I'm convinced that's where some of our neuroses have come from when
Mm,
it comes to feeling like we're not enough,
mm,
feeling unworthy in a sense. And
mm.
a good example of that is imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I think that the constant hustle, even of
Mm.
self improvement, and seeing so many people who seemingly thrive at it that you don't
Yeah.
know are
Yep.
struggling just as hard as you, maybe even
Yeah.
more so.
Yeah.
They're not healed, they're not doing well mentally, and you're comparing yourself to a very curated image of what their life looks like, and you don't realize what is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I will say I'm very grateful that all of that got exposed.
Mm.
It's still really hard to know
Mhm.
what is genuine and what is not, to the point where I just take 99.9% of it as being disingenuine at this point,
Mm.
especially if you're trying to sell me a product. Bless your hearts. You could really, really have spent your own money on it and really believe in this product and have used it before you even became YouTube famous or social media famous. But if you're trying to sell it to me, if you have a link in your bio or if you have one of those tags like on TikTok where if you click on it, it goes to the product, I'm going to think you're full of shit. And that's the way that I keep myself safe, honestly, because you can drive yourself crazy with how quickly trends change, even just within
Yes.
beauty.
My gosh, yes.
1 second it's snail mucin, and then the next it's beef tallow, and then the
Yeah.
next it's Korean beauty products, and then the
Yep.
next it's Japan. And
Yeah.
then, oh my goodness, like
You can't keep up. It's impossible to keep up.
it
But
is
people
so
try.
impossible.
But people try, and they're literally just burning through their money to try to keep up with what they're seeing and what's being advertised. And so it becomes toxic. Unfortunately, I think also the issue now with it being so oversaturated is
Mhm.
that the meaning of what self improvement is now looks different per person, which is not a bad thing, but then it's a bad thing when it goes to different extremes that aren't actually about your self improvement. I will say, as someone who has been on social media and YouTube and has tried to build a positive community for creatives, and
Yeah.
that's something I've always been adamant about is being open about mental health, especially because it does affect so many creatives and wanting to help others find like-minded people. Even with that, it has been a struggle in the last 10 years to not put on the persona that I have my shit together, that I'm healthy, that I'm great, that I'm fine. Even when
Yeah.
I'm sharing about the realities of mental health, there was still this like need to
Mhm.
have it together. And it's only in the last year when my life fell apart that I started going, and I even tried to
Fuck
come
it.
back to, yeah, I went back to YouTube and I was like, look, y'all, I'm not going to hide it anymore. I used to hide my bad days. I used to hide when I was struggling. I'm not going to do that anymore. You're going to see the real shit. Hopefully you stick around because it did create a sense of burnout to be on all the time, even when
Mhm.
it was under the umbrella of a healthy subject like mental health and self improvement. We were still trying to be on
Yeah.
all the time for social media, for an audience, even life, people in your life, the persona and the putting out there that we have it all together and that
Mhm.
we need to do all of these things and that we are doing all these things when we're not. And
Yeah.
it so we're not even living authentically for the people within our lives in real time, in
Yeah.
addition to what we're putting on social media. And that's exhausting.
It is. A lot of people, unfortunately, have been exposed for not being genuine, and even the simplest things like daily journaling. We're full of internet sleuths now, so you will not get away with shit these days.
Yeah.
But one content creator, I don't know who she is. She was some like trad girlfriend, but she would show her like day in the life of and what she would do every morning, which it's like most of y'all bitches are not making your bed every morning, but okay.
For real.
And then she would show that she was daily journaling, and She fucked up at one point and showed too much of what was on the page, and people zoomed in and realized that she wasn't really writing any of the things that she was saying in the voiceover and that it was very different. I'm sure it was really embarrassing for her and for anybody who gets caught in a lie like that. But I will say that it is very difficult to maintain a lot of those daily habits. Some
Yeah.
people, depending on your personality and if you don't have ADHD or ADD, if you're not neurospicy at all,
Yeah, for real.
if
What's
you're
that like?
completely right, if you're
What is that?
completely neurotypical, you might not have a problem with keeping daily routines. But for the rest of us, it is very difficult. It's a daily struggle. We're not always consistent. What I would like to see more genuine content creators, period.
Mm.
More genuine public figures. But I do know that you're never going to satisfy everybody
No,
because
absolutely not.
then you have people who go and share their struggles online. And then you have people going in on them, being like, why are you telling this to us? You should be doing X, Y, and Z instead of publicizing it, monetizing it, all of this stuff. And I do get it because I do think that there are certain times when it goes a little bit overboard. Like when I see people filming their therapy sessions. Don't do that. That's private.
Please don't do that. Gosh.
I don't need to see you setting up your camera to then go cry about whatever, you're sliding down a wall crying. And it's like people have made fun of that now because it's like you had to set up your camera and sit there and get yourself, it's like acting
Yeah.
essentially.
Which
My
then
thing is,
discredits something that's so important that shouldn't then turn into a social mockery, but it will.
exactly. And I've seen videos where people have talked about something that's very personal to them and they've gotten emotional. And I felt that emotion too. Like I
Well,
could feel
because we can
myself.
tell what's authentic.
Right, I could feel myself tearing up and really empathizing with them. And I think that's where the balance is because I don't think that you should always portray your life as being perfect and together. It's okay to show the struggle and the bad days, but I think also that can be taken to an extreme where it becomes like trauma porn. Now, before we get into how to fix your self-improvement burnout, I want to say as very tiny like grain of sand content creators that we are.
For real.
One, we have been there, even as
Mm.
small as our platform is, and it is tiny, it is minuscule. We have still gotten people making crazy comments to us,
Yeah.
saying things that are so out of pocket. There's nothing that you can say to me. You don't pay my bills. You don't give me life. There is nothing that you can say to me that hasn't already been said to me or I haven't thought of my damn self. I'm very happy in my life. My life is so rich and so fulfilling
Mm.
outside of this this podcast is not our lives. It's something
No.
fun that we're doing, which is why
Mhm.
we're like, hey, if it takes off, great. If not, that's okay.
We got other stuff we're doing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Speaking of other stuff, because some of the other stuff that we do is actually what is helpful when it comes to fixing
Mm.
your self-improvement burnout. I think this is the most integral part of this whole
Yes.
episode.
Yes.
So, the number one thing is start with a clean slate. Throw
Mm.
everything out. Everything. Even the stuff that you're like, well, maybe this might. No, throw it out.
Okay.
You can always reintroduce it if it is something that is good for you. But I think starting with a clean slate is really important to not only weed out the bad stuff that is actually not helpful to you, but to give you a sense of clarity about where you're beginning. Because when you
Mm.
begin with nothing and you slowly start to build on that, you're
Mm.
not having to, again, nitpick through everything because you have nothing.
Mm.
So starting with a clean slate is my number one suggestion for how to fix self-improvement burnout. And then from there, you can move on to the next thing.
Which would be to set realistic expectations. And I think that really goes with the clean slate aspect. Whatever it is you had in mind before, whatever you saw, whatever list you made, like throw it all out, start fresh, and set realistic. And I would make them small, attainable,
So small.
small attainable goals and expectations, and then you can always add later, but start small, start with a few, just certain things that are realistic to what you know you're capable of achieving on a weekly, not even a day to day, maybe start with like a weekly basis. Like when we say small, like really really break it down.
especially if you're neurospicy like us, this is why it's so important to start with a clean slate, because this will prevent you from doing the comparison of like, well, this girl journals every day.
Mm,
Everybody is different. Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses, even though she does it seemingly, because again,
yeah.
parasocial relationship, you don't know her, you don't know if she's doing that every day, and she's doing it for content. This
Mhm.
is her job. This is their
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
If you know that you're not good at keeping a consistent journal, then maybe set the goal, I want to journal one time this week, and then
Mm.
build it from there. That's how small we're talking about with the expectations.
Yes, especially because it's a new year, so this is a perfect time.
It is really the perfect time. And
Yeah.
then that brings us to the next one, which is redefine what success looks like to you.
Mm.
Yes, you want consistency because consistency breeds good habits, but it's not just about being consistent, because sometimes we will fall off the bandwagon. It shouldn't be so much about being perfect all the time, so much as it should be about being determined. Being someone who, after you fall off the bandwagon, you get back up and you keep going. Which, in order to do that, you need this next thing.
Yeah. Practice self-compassion.
Oh boy.
That's maybe one of the hardest ones, but it's also so important. And I mean, it's something I am still working out with my therapist. But self compassion is super important because life is going to life. So even when you make all the contingency plans to be consistent with something,
Mhm.
life is going to throw a monkey wrench. And depending where your mental state is and how neurospicy you are, can really put you on a tailspin because you feel then suddenly like a failure. And if you failed at meeting this one thing, now it's all going in the garbage. So that is where we have to, yeah, because I'm an all or nothing. It's part of ADHD too. And
Yep.
so it's very important that we have to like take a second. Take a
Mhm.
step back, give ourselves a moment in silence without all the voices and all the noise,
Yeah.
and remember to practice self compassion. Really be more caring towards ourselves and more gentle with ourselves and being compassionate towards, hey, we're trying.
That's the
And
key.
that's the key. The perfection aspect is really what we need to kind of like drill out of our generations right now. And so,
Mhm.
even more so, that comes against us being compassionate towards ourselves because we then consider ourselves failures and guilt and shame. No, let's throw all that shit out and be more caring towards the little inner childs within us.
Yes. It's so true. And I will say, as someone who has been practicing self compassion, also because I'm in therapy and my therapist told me I'm really mean to myself, it will lessen the time that you spend not being consistent.
Mm.
Because I think the shame and the guilt is what keeps you off the bandwagon longer than just jumping right back on. And
Mm.
yes, if you are like us and you have ADHD, there are other things like executive dysfunction and task paralysis that also contribute to that. So you definitely don't be needing shame and guilt to make that worse, honey. I think compassion looks like not being down on yourself, not comparing yourself, just not being negative about you needing a break.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our next point, prioritize rest and self care.
Ooh.
We need rest. We cannot be productive 24/7, 365. That is how we get burned out in the fucking first place. It is not
Yeah.
realistic whatsoever. I follow this girl on YouTube. Her name is Cozy K. Shout out Cozy K.
Ooh, yes.
And her life looks very envious online. Her
Very,
house
very
is super
oof.
cute. She's always reading and
Her
coloring and
gaming
doing crafts.
office and
She's
craft
she
office.
just went on a book retreat that I was like, "Oh, I'd love to do that." We don't see the parts of her life that are not as pretty as what she puts out there. Not to say that she's not being genuine. It's more so like this is the content that people want to see. Her whole shtick is being cozy.
Yep.
Having a mental breakdown isn't cozy. So I get why we don't see some of the more difficult parts of things or the harder days. And if we do hear about it, it's kind of in passing and doesn't really profoundly affect the watcher. The reason I bring her up is one, there are things to aspire to. It's
Mm,
okay to aspire to certain things without
mm,
necessarily comparing your life to that person or using them as a measuring stick for yourself because,
Yeah.
again, you don't know them. But the amount of time that I see her doing hobbies and resting, because hobbies is part of self care, is aspiring to me to
Mm.
go, wow, slowing down, being cozy, it feeds your soul, it feeds your mind,
Mm.
it feeds your heart. These are things that you need to do. Maybe not all the time. I wish it was my full time job, but to try to carve out time in your life at some point to do the things that you love to do, whether that's reading, whether that's knitting, whether that's coloring, like whatever it is that sparks joy in your
Mhm.
life. And yes, we still need to continuously educate ourselves because part of self improvement is educating ourselves and making sure we know what works for us. Because that's
Mhm.
another part of it, making sure you know what works for you. Because
Yep.
everybody's going to have a differing opinion. And if you listen to every person,
Gosh.
every self help guru, every nutritionist, and I say that with air quotes because I don't
Yeah.
believe half the people online that say that they're nutritionists are nutritionists or an expert in whatever field that they're toting to their
Mm.
audience.
Mhm.
There's a lot of contradicting information out there and it can feel very overwhelming. There's nothing wrong with trying something out and then realizing this doesn't work for me and being okay with letting it go. That doesn't work for me. That doesn't spark joy for me. You don't have to copy everything that somebody else does. Figure out what works for you, what hobbies
Mhm.
you enjoy, the type
Mhm.
of rest that feeds you.
Mhm.
Maybe it doesn't look like vegging out or bed rotting. Maybe it looks like going on a walk. It's
Mm.
still active, but it's something that gives you joy, something that gives you time in nature. And so it feeds your soul in some type of way. So just do what works for you.
Next is, and this one I feel like our generation is becoming more firm about, which is setting boundaries and
Mhm.
setting firm boundaries because, oh man, let me tell you, if you don't do it, people will happily take advantage. Even when loved ones, close friends get angry because of you're setting these boundaries, we have to remember that the reason people get upset is because suddenly your boundary doesn't give them access to you in a way they used to have. And it benefited them more than it obviously benefited you. And so, unfortunately, we're going to have to let them get mad because
Yep.
you matter. Our health matters mentally, emotionally, and physically. And with that is boundaries. There's nothing wrong with that. It is very healthy to let people understand what is okay, what is not okay, what line needs to be set on any given subject. Let people know, don't feel ashamed, don't feel bad
Mhm.
about setting them with your closest loved ones and friends, especially anyone outside of that circle that are acquaintances and such,
Yeah.
coworkers, even bosses. You have to set your boundaries that obviously are reasonable
Mhm.
because if not, people will happily suck you dry
Yeah.
unless you put your foot down and say otherwise.
And let me just tack on to that. One, we can tie that back to rest because just know that resting, having anything leisure, people might judge you for that because we live in
Yeah.
a productivity all the time, 24/7.
Hustle, hustle.
Don't let yourself be guilted because you prioritize rest. And I can tell you that because my therapist told me that and she is actually licensed and educated. So this is not coming from me. This is coming from my
Mm,
therapist who told me that that's what I need to do.
mm.
But also, you need to set boundaries with yourself.
Yeah. Ooh.
If you know that going onto social media and doom scrolling through certain people's profiles is going to give you FOMO or make you feel inadequate, you need to set a boundary with yourself that you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
If you know that you get overwhelmed by information and that you don't know who to believe, you need to set boundaries with yourself that you're not just, again, going to doom scroll and listen to every Tom, Dick, and Nancy out there who has an opinion.
Yeah.
That you're going to go and seek information from your therapist,
Mm,
maybe like one or two sources of information, and that is it. Whatever it's going to take for you to keep your mental health in good standing, you need to
mm.
set those boundaries with yourself. Buying every beauty product out there, which is a part of self improvement, or
Yeah.
exercising to an unhealthy amount, those are boundaries that you might have to put on yourself of like, hey, It's okay to go exercise. It's part of self-improvement, but you don't have to do it 3 times a day. It's okay to take care of your skin, take care of your body, but you don't have to go broke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, those type of boundaries also need to be set so that you can do everything in moderation, which brings us
Mm,
to our last point. Maintain balance. In everything that you do, there are extremes in both directions.
yes.
Whether that's not doing anything at all or doing too fucking much. You need to find that middle ground, because that middle ground, there is safety in that place. If you feel like the pendulum is swinging and you're going to one extreme, correct it. You don't have to overcorrect and then go to the other extreme. So let's say you're feeling a little bit of burnout and you know that you need to rest. Maybe don't bed rot for an entire week. Maybe do it for like a day or two and then get
Mm,
back into slowly being productive. Not
mm,
going right back to your previous schedule, which didn't work for you, but maybe incorporating 1 or 2 things and still resting. And
yeah.
then maybe the next time you can incorporate an additional thing. Balance. We need to have balance, because everything that you see on social media and in media in general is extreme. Just
Yes.
know that
It's
it is
not balanced.
there's no balance with what you see on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, or anywhere else. It is an extreme of some kind.
And there's always a set urgency to have it now, now, now. Do it now, now, now.
Take your time. You don't need to rush into anything. Balance. So, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our episode, in which we always do a call to action. So, our call to action this week is: have you ever experienced self improvement burnout? And if so, how did you overcome it? What are the things that worked for you? We really, really want to know, because
Mm-hmm.
you never know what you've done could work for somebody else, could work for us
Exactly.
even.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be in the comment section, not only responding, but looking at all of your ideas and the things that work for you and seeing if they could possibly work for us too. Burnout is something that takes a very long time, unfortunately, to get out of. And so I think that we're all still in that process in some shape or form, whether it's self-improvement burnout or it's another type of burnout.
For real. Especially now after the holidays and just the last year in general. Absolutely. Give us some tips because, again, a point I think we made valid throughout this episode, not
Hmm.
everything is going to work for everyone. And so we
Exactly.
all have to figure out what it is that does work for us. So, by all means, seeing other people's ideas is definitely helpful. So, friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please be sure that if you're watching over on YouTube, you like, subscribe, you comment. Also, on any podcast platform you're listening to this, you can, I believe, heart episodes. You can comment on a lot of the platforms. Make sure you're either following us, you're subscribed to us, and also, if you can do us a great favor and leave us a review on either the episode or the show in general on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, that is greatly appreciated. It does
Hmm.
help us with the algorithm so that other people who would also enjoy the content can find us and we can continue building this wonderful community. So thank you guys again for listening, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.